The lawyer's voice trembled slightly as he read the final clause. The entire Blackthorn estate, valued at approximately $120 million, is left to Miss Lila Hart. Stunned silence filled the mahogany-paneled room for exactly 3 seconds. Then chaos erupted. That's impossible. Eleanor's oldest son shouted, jumping to his feet. Who the hell is Lila Hart? Fraud, her daughter screamed. This is obvious fraud. I sat frozen in my chair at the back of the room, clutching my worn leather satchel against my chest. Every face in the room turned toward me with expressions ranging from confusion to pure hatred. I'd never met any of these people before today. I'd never even met Eleanor Blackthorn. There must be some mistake, I whispered, but no one heard me over the shouting. The lawyer raised his hand for silence. I assure you, this will was executed properly 3 weeks before Mrs. Blackthorn's death. She was of completely sound mind. 3 doctors verified her mental capacity. Eleanor's son slammed his fist on the table. I want this investigated immediately. The lawyer reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed wooden box. He slid it across the polished table toward me. Mrs. Blackthorn insisted this be opened by Miss Hart. Alone. My heart pounded as insults flew across the room like weapons. Gold digger, someone shouted. She must have manipulated her, another voice accused. How did she even know our mother? I wanted to tell them I had no idea. That this made no sense to me either. But my voice wouldn't work. The lawyer's assistant held up documentation. The will was notarized, witnessed by 3 independent parties, and filed with the state. Everything is legally binding. Eleanor's daughter grabbed the papers and scanned them frantically. Her hands shook. This can't be real. Mother would never do this to us. I stared at the wooden box in front of me. It was old, hand-carved, beautiful. My fingers traced the smooth wood grain. Inside, I could hear something shifting when I moved it slightly. The lawyer cleared his throat. Miss Hart, Mrs. Blackthorn left specific instructions. You're to open this in private and follow what you find inside. I nodded, unable to speak. As I stood to leave, Eleanor's grandson blocked my path. His face was red with rage. You won't get away with this, he hissed. Whatever you did to her will prove it. I clutched the box tighter and pushed past him. Her family expected the fortune. But her will named a stranger. My name is Lila Hart. I'm 27 years old, and I restore antiques for a living. Broken pocket watches. Music boxes that stopped playing decades ago. Things that time forgot. I work in a small shop downtown, surrounded by the ghosts of other people's memories. I'd received the lawyer's letter 2 weeks ago, asking me to attend the reading of Eleanor Blackthorn's will. I'd never heard of Eleanor Blackthorn. I almost threw the letter away, thinking it was a mistake. But something made me come to this meeting. Now I was sitting in my car outside the law office, holding a wooden box from a dead woman I'd never met, who'd apparently left me her entire fortune. My hand shook as I opened it carefully. Inside was a cracked pocket watch, its glass face spiderwebbed, but still intact. A folded letter on cream-colored paper, and a single brass key, old and tarnished. I unfolded the letter with trembling fingers. The handwriting was elegant, flowing. If you're reading this, Lila, I trust the watch still ticks. I read the letter 3 times, my confusion growing with each word. Dear Lila, you don't know me, but I knew your father. He saved my life once, on a rainy night when I had nothing left to lose. He gave me back my soul when I thought it was gone forever. I can never repay that debt to him, but I can repay it to you. My father had died 5 years ago in a car accident. We'd been close, but he'd never mentioned knowing anyone named Eleanor Blackthorn. The letter continued, What I'm leaving you isn't just money or property. It's the truth about who I was, what I lost, and why your father was the only person who understood. Follow the things I loved most, and they'll guide you home. Start with music. Music was always my first language. At the bottom, in slightly shaky handwriting, she'd written, The watch holds time. The key holds secrets. The truth holds everything. I picked up the pocket watch carefully. It was beautiful despite the crack. Silver with intricate engravings on the back. When I turned it over, I saw something carved into the metal. Musical notes. A short melody. I wound the watch gently. Amazingly, it started ticking. The letter had mentioned a vineyard. Blackthorn Vineyard. I put everything back in the box and started my car. I needed answers. Blackthorn Vineyard sat 30 miles outside the city, nestled in rolling hills that probably used to be covered in grapevines. Now it looked abandoned. The main house was massive but shuttered, paint peeling, weeds growing through cracks in the driveway. I parked and walked toward the entrance. The front door was locked, but the key from the box fit perfectly. Inside, dust covered everything, furniture draped in white sheets. The air smelled like old wood and forgotten memories. In the main hall, a grand piano sat against the far wall. Above it hung a framed photograph of a woman playing that same piano. She was probably in her 30s in the photo. Beautiful, her fingers frozen mid-chord. Eleanor Blackthorn, I assumed. I walked to the piano and lifted the cover carefully. Dust rose in clouds. The keys were yellowed with age. But when I pressed one, the sound was surprisingly clear. I pulled out the pocket watch and looked at the carved melody again. For notes, simple and haunting. I played them on the piano. The fourth key stuck halfway down. I pressed harder, and something inside the piano clicked. A hidden compartment beneath the keyboard slid open. Inside the compartment was a rolled parchment sealed with red wax. My heart raced as I broke the seal carefully and unrolled it. The paper was old, the ink faded but readable. For the one who listens, not just hears. Below that was a list of coordinates, latitude and longitude. I pulled out my phone and entered them into my Maps application. They pointed to a location on the coast, about 50 miles from here. A lighthouse, according to the satellite view. I took a photo of the coordinates and rolled the parchment back up carefully. Behind me, I heard footsteps. I spun around. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, mid-30s, expensive suit. His face was twisted with anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded. I recognized him from the will reading. Eleanor's grandson. "I was invited," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Eleanor left me." "She left you nothing," he interrupted, striding toward me. "That will is a fraud, and you know it. You manipulated an old woman, and now you're trespassing on property that belongs to my family." I held up the key. "She gave me this. She wanted me here." "Return what isn't yours," he growled, reaching for me. I stepped back quickly, putting the piano between us. "I'm not stealing anything," I said firmly. "Your grandmother left specific instructions for me to follow. If you have a problem with her will, take it up with the lawyer." "Oh, we will. We're contesting it right now." His eyes were cold. "Our lawyers are already building a case. You won't see a penny of that money." "I don't want the money," I said honestly. "I just want to understand why she did this." He laughed bitterly. "Because you tricked her somehow. Maybe drugged her. Maybe convinced her we didn't love her. Whatever you did, we'll prove it." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of the notarized documents the lawyer had provided. 3 doctors certified she was mentally sound. The will is legal. His jaw clenched. "We'll see what a judge says." I walked toward the door, giving him a wide berth. As I passed, he grabbed my arm. "You'll regret crossing a Blackthorn. We have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, investigators. We'll destroy you." I pulled my arm free. "I didn't cross anyone. Your grandmother made a choice. Maybe instead of threatening me, you should ask yourself why she made it." I walked out before he could respond, but my hands were shaking as I got into my car. The coordinates led me to an old lighthouse on a rocky stretch of coast. The lighthouse itself was abandoned, the paint faded to gray, windows broken. But the door was unlocked. Inside, the circular room smelled like salt water and decay. Stairs spiraled upward, but I was drawn to something in the corner. An easel. On it sat a half-finished oil painting covered in dust and cobwebs. The painting showed a young soldier in uniform. His face was kind, his eyes gentle. Around his neck hung a military pendant with distinctive markings. I stepped closer, my breath catching. I knew that pendant. My father had worn one exactly like it. It had been buried with him. The soldier in the painting had my father's eyes, his smile, but it couldn't be him. This painting looked decades old. I carefully lifted the canvas off the easel. The back was sealed with canvas board. I ran my fingers along the edges and felt something. A slight gap. Using my keys, I carefully pried the backing loose. Another envelope fell out. this one sealed with the same red wax as before. I opened Eleanor's second letter with trembling hands. He told me you'd understand silence better than words. Your father was a man of few words, but infinite kindness. The night of the fire, when everyone else ran, he ran toward the flames. He saved more than my life that night. He saved my reason for living. Fire? What fire? The letter continued. I've hidden the truth where only someone like you could find it. Someone who fixes broken things. The painting shows the man I loved before I became a Blackthorn. Before the fire took him from me. Your father helped me remember that love doesn't die. It just hides. At the bottom was a hand-drawn sketch of a wine bottle label. Rosevale Reserve 1960, for it read. Below that, Eleanor had written, "Find the vintage that shouldn't exist." I pulled out my phone and searched for information about a fire at Blackthorn Vineyard. The results loaded slowly. Devastating fire destroys Blackthorn Vineyard, 1964. Historic wine collection lost. One fatality. One fatality. My hands shook as I clicked through article after article. The fire had destroyed the vineyard's original wine cellar. The entire vintage from that year was declared lost. But Eleanor's letter suggested otherwise. I spent 2 hours in the local library, searching through old newspaper archives on microfilm. The fire had been massive. It started in the wine cellar and spread rapidly. Eleanor had been trapped inside. One article included a grainy photo, a man carrying an unconscious woman from the burning building. The man's face was unclear, but the caption read, "Unknown hero saves Eleanor Blackthorn. Identity remains mystery." Another article from a week later mentioned Eleanor in the hospital, refusing to speak about the incident. I found an interview from months afterward where she'd married Harold Blackthorn, a wealthy businessman. "I'm ready to move forward with my life," she was quoted as saying. But there was something in her eyes in the photo. Even in black and white newsprint, I could see it. Sadness. Deep, permanent sadness. I made copies of everything and drove back to the vineyard. If Eleanor was right, if something had survived the fire, it would be hidden somewhere on this property. I just had to find where. I searched the vineyard property for hours as the sun began to set. The main cellar entrance was boarded up, marked with danger signs. Structurally unsafe. But I walked the perimeter anyway, looking for anything unusual. Behind the old storage house, almost completely hidden by overgrown weeds, I found it. A stone foundation that didn't match the rest of the building. Newer mortar. Someone had bricked up a doorway. I pulled out the brass key from Eleanor's box. Below the brickwork was a rusted iron door, barely visible. I cleared away the weeds and found the keyhole. The key fit. The door was heavy, and I had to put my whole weight against it to push it open. The hinges screamed in protest. Stone steps led down into darkness. I turned on my phone's flashlight and descended carefully. The underground room was small, maybe 12 feet square. But every wall was lined with wine racks, and the racks were full. Dozens of bottles, perfectly preserved, labels faded but readable. I moved closer, my flashlight beam scanning the bottles. Most were labeled Blackthorn Vineyard, various years. Then I saw it. One entire rack dedicated to bottles labeled Rosevale Reserve 1964. And below the main label, in smaller text, Hart and Company. Restoration. My family name. My father's workshop. I picked up one of the bottles carefully, afraid it might crumble in my hands. The glass was thick, the wine inside dark red and clear. Perfectly preserved. Whoever had sealed the cellar had done it right. Temperature controlled, humidity regulated. These bottles were worth a fortune. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. On one of the bottles, stuck to the glass with aged tape, was a small envelope. I peeled it off gently and opened it. Inside was a note in Eleanor's handwriting. "The truth is preserved in more than wine." And below that, a tiny object wrapped in tissue paper. I unwrapped it carefully. A microfilm strip. The kind used in old cameras or document storage. I needed equipment to read it, but I could see tiny text printed on the film even with my naked eye. This was documentation of something. Proof of something Eleanor wanted hidden, but not lost. Upstairs, I heard a car door slam. Voices. Multiple voices. Eleanor's family had found me. I climbed the stairs as quietly as possible and peered out through the gap in the doorway. 3 expensive cars were parked near the main house. I counted at least 6 people, including Eleanor's children and grandchildren. "She's here somewhere," one of them said. "Her car is still in the driveway. Check everywhere. If she's found anything that belongs to us, we need to secure it immediately." I carefully closed the iron door and locked it. The brick wall would hide it, but not if they searched carefully. I needed to leave, but they were between me and my car. I pulled out my phone. 1 bar of signal. I called the lawyer who'd handled the will reading. "Mr. Peterson? This is Lila Hart. I'm at the Blackthorn Vineyard, and Eleanor's family is here. They're threatening me." His voice was calm. "Stay where you are and stay safe. I'm sending someone immediately." "And Miss Hart?" Mrs. Blackthorn anticipated this. "She left specific legal protections for you. You have every right to be there." 15 minutes later, a police car arrived. I emerged from behind the storage building. Eleanor's son immediately pointed at me. "Officer, this woman is trespassing on private property." The officer looked at me. "Are you Lila Hart?" "Yes." He nodded. "I have documentation here from the Blackthorn estate attorney confirming your legal access to this property. You're not trespassing." Eleanor's daughter stepped forward, her face red. "This is our mother's property. According to the will, ma'am, it belongs to Miss Hart now." I watched their faces as the truth settled in. They couldn't touch me legally, but the hatred in their eyes made it clear this wasn't over. That night, in my apartment, I took the microfilm strip to my workshop. I had an old microfilm reader I'd purchased years ago for restoring vintage documents. I loaded the film carefully and focused the lens. Documents appeared on the screen. Bank records, property deeds, transfer papers. Eleanor had moved massive amounts of money years before her death. Millions of dollars transferred to various accounts, all under the name of a charitable foundation, the Rosevale Foundation. Each document was meticulously organized, dated, notarized. Eleanor had been planning this for years. Decades, maybe. She'd slowly, quietly, moved her fortune out of her family's reach and into charitable trusts. The Blackthorn family wouldn't inherit her wealth because there was no wealth left in the estate itself. It was brilliant. But there was one document I couldn't fully read. A password-protected account. The largest one. The screen showed, "Access requires authentication phrase." No hint about what the phrase might be. I sat back in my chair, frustrated. Eleanor's letter had said to follow the things she loved most. She loved music. That had led me to the piano and the hidden parchment. What else had she loved? I went back to the vineyard the next morning, this time with legal documentation from Mr. Peterson. The main house felt different in daylight. Still abandoned, but less hostile. I walked through room after room, looking for clues. In what must have been Eleanor's personal study, I found shelves of books. Music theory, winemaking, art history, and photographs. Hundreds of them in albums. I sat on the dusty floor and started going through them carefully. Young Eleanor, maybe 18, standing in a vineyard with a handsome man. Both laughing. Eleanor at a piano. Her fingers on the keys, the same man turning pages for her. Eleanor in a wedding dress, but not with Harold Blackthorn. With the soldier from the painting. I turned the photo over. Written on the back, Thomas Rosevale, 1963. Rosevale, not Blackthorn. The vineyard had been named Rosevale before the fire. I kept flipping through albums. Then I found it. A photo of my father, much younger, standing with Eleanor in front of a workshop. The sign above the door read, Hart and Company. Restoration. On the back, the man who fixed what fire broke. 1965. The year after the fire. My father had helped Eleanor restore things after she'd lost everything, including, apparently, helping her preserve that wine collection. But there was something else in the photo. Eleanor was holding something. I found a magnifying glass on the desk and looked closer. A music box. Small, ornate, beautiful. And I knew where I'd seen it before. The piano. The hidden compartment. I'd been so focused on the parchment that I hadn't checked if there was anything else inside. I rushed back to the grand hall. The compartment was still open from yesterday. I reached inside, feeling along the edges. My fingers found something. Small, hard metal. I pulled out a music box, exactly like the one in the photograph. It was tarnished, the small crank handle stiff with age. I turned it carefully. The mechanism inside clicked and whirred, then began to play. The same melody from the pocket watch. But as the music played, something else happened. The bottom of the music box clicked and slid open. Inside was a locket. Gold, heart-shaped, delicate. I opened it with trembling fingers. On one side was a photo of young Thomas Roosevelt in his uniform. On the other side was a photo of my father, much younger than I'd ever seen him. And between them, tucked in the space where the photos met, was a tiny folded piece of paper. I unfolded it with the tip of my fingernail. Coordinates. Again, these led to a coastal chapel about 20 miles away. The chapel of glass sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was small, maybe 30 feet long, but beautiful. The entire eastern wall was stained glass, designed to catch the morning sun. I walked inside slowly. The glass depicted scenes from nature. Grapevines, musical notes, ocean waves, and in one panel, almost hidden in the design, was a name worked into the glass. Hart. My family name, immortalized in a window Eleanor had commissioned. I walked to the altar. It was simple, wooden, handmade. There was a small door built into its base. I knelt and tried the brass key. It fit. Inside was another wooden box, smaller than the first, sealed with wax. I broke the seal and opened it. A letter. Shorter this time. When they come for you, don't run. The truth is your shield. What I'm giving you isn't wealth. It's purpose. Use it to build what hatred destroyed. Below, that was a legal document. The full charter of the Roosevelt Foundation, with me listed as the sole trustee and director. Eleanor had left me control of everything. Not just the money, the mission, to restore what had been lost, to help people rebuild after tragedy. The same thing my father had done for her. I was still in the chapel when they arrived. I heard the cars before I saw them. Multiple vehicles pulling up outside. Through the stained glass, I saw Eleanor's children, their spouses, and two people in suits I didn't recognize. Lawyers, probably. I stood and walked to the door. Eleanor's son stepped forward. We need to talk. Privately. Anything you say to me, you can say here, I replied. One of the lawyers opened a briefcase. Miss Hart, my clients are prepared to offer you a settlement. $5 million in exchange for you relinquishing all claims to the Blackthorn estate. No. Eleanor's daughter's voice was sharp. Don't be stupid. $5 million is more money than you'll see in your lifetime. I don't want Eleanor's money. She wanted it to go to charity. That's what I'm going to do. The other lawyer smiled. Actually, according to our research, you can't. The charitable foundation you mentioned is a separate entity from the estate. The estate, including the vineyard property, is yours personally. You can sell it to us. I pulled out the documents Eleanor had left me. I'm not selling anything. This property will be restored and opened as a center for art and music education. Eleanor wanted it that way. She wanted us to have it. Eleanor's son shouted. We're her family. Then maybe you should have acted like it while she was alive. I walked past them toward my car. Behind me, I heard one of them shout, We'll bury you in legal fees. The legal battle lasted 3 months. Eleanor's family filed motion after motion. They claimed undue influence, questioned Eleanor's mental state, demanded the will be overturned. But Mr. Peterson had been preparing for this for years, apparently. He had video recordings of Eleanor explaining her decisions, medical records proving her mental clarity, testimony from staff members about how her family had treated her, and most damning of all, recordings. Eleanor had been recording her interactions with her family for the last 2 years of her life. In court, the judge listened to clip after clip. Mother, we need you to sign this power of attorney, just to make things easier. We've decided to sell the vineyard. You don't need to worry about it. Why are you being so difficult? We're your children. Don't you trust us? And Eleanor's voice, tired and sad. I trust you to do exactly what you've always done. Take. The courtroom was silent when the recordings ended. The judge ruled in my favor. The will stood. Eleanor's family had no claim. But there was one thing I still couldn't access. The password-protected account. The largest portion of Eleanor's fortune. I had the legal right to it, but I couldn't open it without the authentication phrase. I kept coming back to Eleanor's words. Follow the things I loved most. Music had led me to the piano. The vineyard had led me to the wine cellar. But what else? I went through Eleanor's personal effects one more time. Jewelry, clothing, books. Then I remembered. The pocket watch. I'd wound it that first day, but I hadn't examined it closely since. I picked it up and studied it under my magnifying lamp. The crack in the glass face wasn't random. It formed a pattern, almost like letters. I traced the crack with my finger. LOV. I turned the watch over and looked at the engraved melody again. Below it, in letters so small I'd missed them before, was an inscription. Love never dies. Only hides. That was it. The phrase. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the protected account. In the authentication field, I typed, "Love never dies, only hides." The screen loaded. Access granted. The account contained $47 million. But it wasn't just money. It was a complete archive. Eleanor's memoirs. Thousands of pages of writing. I opened the first file, dated 40 years ago. Today I married Harold Blackthorn. It's what my family wanted. What society expected. The vineyard needs his money to survive after the fire. But I buried my heart with Thomas. Everything after this is just after. I spent the entire night reading. Eleanor wrote about Thomas, the love of her life. How they planned to marry. How he died in the fire trying to save her. She wrote about Harold, who'd been kind but never understood her. Who'd wanted an elegant wife for his business functions, not a partner. She wrote about her children, growing up entitled and cold. How she tried to connect with them but failed. And she wrote about my father. Today a man named James Hart came to restore the music box Thomas gave me. It was damaged in the fire. James worked on it for 3 days. When he returned it, it played perfectly. He charged me $20. I tried to pay him more. He refused. He said, "Things worth fixing are worth fixing, right?" Thomas would have said the same thing. There were dozens of entries about my father, how he'd become her friend, how they'd worked together to secretly preserve the wine collection, how he told her about his daughter, me. The final folder was labeled simply Lila. I opened it with shaking hands. Dear Lila, if you're reading this, you've solved every puzzle I left you. You've proven you're your father's daughter. James told me once that you inherited his gift, the ability to see value in broken things, to understand that what's damaged isn't destroyed. I was pregnant once, Thomas's child, but the fire. I lost the baby. I lost everything. Harold and I tried for years to have more children. By the time my son and daughter were born, I was already gone inside. I gave them everything except what they needed most, the truth about who I was, who I'd been, the woman who died in that fire. James gave me back pieces of myself. And through his stories, you gave me hope. Hope that somewhere someone was being raised right. With kindness. With purpose. This money is yours. But more importantly, the foundation is yours. Restore the vineyard. Make it what it was supposed to be. A place of beauty and music and love. They'll fight you. My family. They'll say terrible things about you and about me. Let them. The truth is your armor. And the truth is this. I chose you because your father chose me when no one else did. Because you understand that the most valuable things in life are the ones we fix, not the ones we buy. Build something beautiful, Lila. For Thomas. For James. For the girl I was before the fire. With all my love, Eleanor. I sat in front of my computer screen and cried. The vault was hidden beneath the vineyard in the old root cellar. It took me 2 weeks to find it, following the final set of coordinates Eleanor had left in her memoir files. Inside was everything. Original artwork by masters I recognized from textbooks, family heirlooms, letters from Thomas, and a ledger. The ledger detailed every dollar Eleanor had quietly donated over the past 40 years. Music scholarships for students who couldn't afford instruments, art programs in schools, support for women leaving abusive relationships. She'd given away millions, silently, anonymously, and she documented every penny of fraud her family had committed. Tax evasion, embezzlement from her accounts, forged documents. I turned everything over to the IRS and the state attorney general. Within 6 months, Eleanor's son was under investigation. Her daughter faced charges. The grandchildren scrambled to distance themselves. Their empires, built on Eleanor's wealth, crumbled. Meanwhile, I began the restoration of the vineyard. It took a year, but we did it. The Rosevale Vineyard reopened as a sanctuary for women artists and musicians. We offered free residencies, studio space, performance venues, everything Eleanor had dreamed of. The wine cellar became a museum, displaying the preserved bottles and telling the story of Eleanor and Thomas. My father's pocket watch sat in a glass case in the center of the exhibit, beside the music box he'd restored. The grand opening was covered by every major news outlet in the state. Stranger restores matriarch's legacy, the headlines read. Eleanor's family wasn't invited, but they came anyway, standing at the back of the crowd during the ceremony. I saw them watching, silent, diminished. I didn't acknowledge them. On the wall behind the stage hung an enlarged portrait of Eleanor, young and laughing, standing in the vineyard with Thomas beside her. A visitor left a single white rose at the base of the portrait. Attached was a note, "She was right about you." At the rededication gala, I stood at the restored grand piano in the main hall. The same piano Eleanor had played. The same piano that had hidden her first clue. I played the melody from the pocket watch. Simple, haunting, beautiful. Behind me, a projection showed photos of Eleanor through the years. Young and in love, middle-aged and hollow, old and tired, and finally, one I'd found in her papers. Eleanor at 83, sitting in her garden, almost smiling. The photo was dated 2 months before she died. On the back she'd written, "Today I finish my last will and testament. For the first time in 40 years, I feel peace." Thomas would approve. I finished playing and turned to the audience. Eleanor's family sat in the back row. Forgotten, humbled, broke. I looked past them to the faces of the young artists who'd already been accepted to our residency program. Faces full of hope and dreams. Some people inherit money, I said. Others inherit meaning. Eleanor Blackthorn left me both. But the meaning matters more. She taught me that the best legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you restore, what you rebuild, what you fix that time tried to break. This vineyard, this sanctuary, exists because one woman refused to let hate win. Because she believed broken things deserve to be made beautiful again. Thank you for being here. For helping make Eleanor's dream real. For proving that love never dies. It only hides, waiting for someone to bring it back into the light. The screen faded to black. The audience stood and applauded. And somewhere, I hoped Eleanor and my father were watching. Proud of what we'd restored together.